Hello friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 26th of September and we are going to deal with three very important topics which are in news. First is Bangladesh lifts ban on Hilsa fish for exports to India. Hilsa is a very important delicacy among the Bengalis. It is extensively consumed in India as well as in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, in fact, produces 70% of Hilsa production all across the world. And last year, Bangladesh imposed an export ban of Hilsa fish to India. In a goodwill gesture now, the current government has uplifted this ban and 3,000 tons of Hilsa will be exported to India. The Durga Puja festivals are coming. That is the main reason behind that. Second is India's military exports to Israel. A petition in the Supreme Court filed by ex-bureaucrats, some lawyers, and some human rights activists, saying that Indian government supplying defense equipments to Israel is equivalent to violating some international laws which India has signed. And according to those international laws, India should not be militarily supporting any country which is responsible for humanitarian crisis. And Israel, as per the International Court of Justice, is responsible for humanitarian crisis. However, the Supreme Court has said that export of defense equipments is the sole prerogative of the executive and it would be equivalent to judicial overreach if we give any judgment on this. Next is food versus cars dilemma. We might have heard food versus fuel dilemma, where sugarcane or other food crops were being produced for manufacturing biofuels. But now there is another dilemma which has come, that is food versus fuel dilemma. Sorry, food versus cars dilemma. This food versus cars dilemma, basically these are EVs. EVs which are using lithium iron phosphate batteries. Phosphate is that key element over here, which is used as a fertilizer also. Now, phosphate is being diverted towards making batteries for EVs and is becoming less available for making fertilizers, which is rising the cost of fertilizers on one hand and reducing the supply of fertilizers on the other hand. This is the dilemma which is being faced by the world, and this dilemma is going to get deepened and strengthened as time progresses. So let's get started and see the topics. Bangladesh lifts ban on Hilsa for exports to India. So this, you can see from this table how much Hilsa fish wash was being exported by Bangladesh to India. Like in September 2023, it promised 3950 tons. It only exported 1300. 2900 tons promised in September 2022, exported only 1300 tons. 4600 tons promised in September 2021, exported only 1200 tons. Now they have promised 3000 tons. Here, somewhere here, the ban came. And now the ban has been removed over here. And that is why this, is in news. And it has promised to supply 3000 tons of Hilsa fish to India. Let's see how much it supplies. And then this blank will be filled up. Now, Bangladesh's interim government has announced the export of 3000 tons of Hilsa fish to India in time of Durga Puja, scheduled from October 9 to 13th. And as I said that, this is a very important delicacy among the Bengalis here in India as well as people there in Bangladesh. So, machi bhat, they call it. Machi is this machi with this fish, Hilsa. Primarily it is consumed, but yes, other varieties of fish is also consumed. And bhat means rice. So this is how it is going to be. Let's see how, Bangladesh walks the talk. It has talked, but let's see how it walks it. Key details, the export context. The announcement comes after the interim government led by Professor Muhammad Yunus imposed a ban earlier this month to focus on local consumption. The Commerce Ministry has now permitted exports due to requests from exporters. As a goodwill gesture, the previous Awami League government allowed Hilsa exports to India each year around this time, although they exported less than the promise. But this government under Muhammad Yunus imposed an export ban and now has uplifted that as well. Bengali delicacy dish, Hilsa, known as locally as Ilish, is a prized fish in Bengali cuisine. Political appeals, India's Fish Importers Association appealed for lifting off the ban amid concerns of disruptions due to Bangladesh's political changes. So, this has been uplifted and This clearly highlights that Bangladesh is, willing to establish good relations with the country. At least it does. About Hilsa fish, the species information, it belongs to this family of Clupidae and is related to herring. It thrives in both salt and fresh water, migrating from the Bay of Bengal to the Ganges River systems for breeding. Cultural significance, it holds a prestigious place in Bengali culinary traditions and is celebrated during the significant events. And a significant event is coming, that is Durga Puja festivals. Bangladesh produces approximately 70% of the world's hilsa and it is recognized as the national fish of Bangladesh. Migration patterns, Hilsa engages in breeding migrations through major river systems like the Ganga, Brahmaputra and Meghna. If I talk about the conservation status, it is least concerned. Least concern means there is ample amount of Hilsa fish available. Least concern ke baad it will come into vulnerable category, then endangered category like this. So there is no such problem with respect to population. But yes, politics at times can be cruel, and that is why those bans are there. Next is India's military exports to Israel, the petition in Supreme Court. So some ex-bureaucrats, lawyers, human rights activists, they filed a petition in the Supreme Court on September 9th that, India should stop exporting arms to Israel. We might have heard that India is importing arms from Israel, but yes, a few components we are exporting to them also, which obviously might be helping Israel in its current war against its neighbors. Neighbors, when I say, it is basically against Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, or for that matter, Iran. So, the court ruled that matters of foreign policy, including military exports, fall solely within the jurisdiction of the government of India. So, the Supreme Court denied to comment anything on this particular issue. Now, key points on the ruling: jurisdiction and foreign policy. Bench consisting of Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Justice J.B. Pardiwala, and Justice Manoj Mishra stated that it lacked the authority. It means Supreme Court lacked the authority to direct the government regarding exports to any country, as foreign trade is a matter strictly under the executive's domain. The court emphasized that assessing allegations against Israel, a sovereign nation, would require jurisdiction that it does not possess. Supreme Court said that I am not an international court, I am a national court. So I cannot, sue Israel, and I cannot also, move into that domain where it has been the prerogative of the executive of the country for formulating foreign policies, deciding whom to trade with, whom not to trade with. So this is what the Supreme Court said. Jurisdiction limits. Court stated that it cannot direct the Indian government regarding military exports, such as matters fall under the executive branch's responsibility. This bench said that it would need to evaluate allegations against Israel, which is outside the court's jurisdiction. As simple as that. Court referred to Article 73 of the Constitution, which grants the Union government exclusive authority in matters of foreign affairs. The exclusive means not even the state government, not even the, I would say, legislature, not even the judiciary. It is the executive authority of the executive, means the Council of Ministers and all. The ruling highlighted the risks of judicial interference, such as potential breaches of contracts between Indian companies and international entities. Now, the background: in this first week of September 2024, former bureaucrats, activists, and senior academics moved to the Supreme Court, seeking to cancel any existing licenses, permissions, and halt the grant of new licenses, permissions to various companies in India for exports of arms and other military equipment to Israel. The writ petition under Article 32 is filed through Advocate Prashant Bhushan. It is submitted that the ongoing export of arms and other military equipment to Israel during its siege in Gaza violates Article 14, that is right to equality, 21, that is right to life, and Article 51C of the Indian Constitution, which promotes respect for international law and treaty obligations. They're saying that India is not respecting international law and treaty obligations. Which international law? That also needs to be known. So let us look into that as well. Key aspects of the petition: India's international humanitarian law obligations. The petition states that India is bound by various international laws and treaties that obligate India not to supply military weapons to states guilty of war crimes, and Israel has been, stated guilty of war crimes by International Court of Justice earlier this year. Now, once a country has been, declared as guilty of war crimes, you know, things, should be dealt accordingly. India is obligated under 1948 Genocide Convention, which it has signed and ratified also to take all measures to prevent genocide. Article 3 makes complicity in genocide a punishable offense. And obligation not to supply weapons to states possibly guilty of war crimes is directly based on common Article 1 of the Geneva Conventions, which also India has ratified. This petition refers to International Court of Justice in a recent decision dated 26 January 2024. As I told you that in the earlier this year, Israel was declared as a country which is committing war crimes by International Court of Justice. And when a country is declared as committing war crimes, so according to this Geneva Convention, the common Article 1, which India has signed and ratified, we should not be supplying war materials to that country. The petition cites the statement from United Nations experts warning against the transfer of weapons and military ammunitions to Israel, which may constitute serious violations of human rights and international humanitarian laws. So, it is this way. But yes, even the West is supplying weapons to Israel. Will these be applicable on us only and not on the West? The West is supplying weapons to Ukraine also. And the war is continuing. It is not like Russia is only violating the human rights. Ukraine is equally violating human rights. Ukraine is also attacking Russia. So let's see how this unfolds. Because the Western countries cannot impose these laws based on their conveniences. They will have to impose these laws and restrictions in equality. So let's see what happens. India's alleged exports to Israel. Petition argues that Article 21, that is right to life, is available to non-citizens and that the state action of exporting arms could directly aid and abet the death of Palestinians during the ongoing war, falling under Supreme Court's judicial review. Supreme Court is saying that how can I guarantee, right to life of people outside my country? Okay, it is available for non-citizens, but they should be inside our country. That is the difference which we need to know and understand. Despite voting for a UN resolution on an immediate ceasefire in Gaza in December 2023, India abstained from voting on a resolution for a ceasefire and arms embargo on Israel in April 2024. Since India was itself, supplying arms to Israel, so we had to, abstain on it. In states that Indian authorities have granted licenses for the export of arms to various companies, including public sector companies, for exports to Israel, even after the ICJ ruling on genocide. The specific instances of arm exports, at least 3 companies in India are, exporting arms to Israel, have been granted licenses for exports to Israel during the ongoing war in Gaza. One is Munition India Limited, a public sector enterprise, was permitted to ship products to Israel in January 2024 and applied again in April for a repeat order. Premier Explosives Limited has been exporting explosives to Israel under SCOMET license since 2021 with approvals for export even after the war began. Then Adani Elbit Advanced Systems India Limited, a joint venture, has manufactured and exported munitions for Israeli military drone extensively used in Gaza between 2019 and 2020. So drones, explosives, all these are being shipped from India to Israel. Next is violation of international obligations. Petition asserts that granting these licenses constitutes a serious violation of India's obligations to these international treaties which India has signed. And this should not go on and on. This should stop actually. It emphasizes that any international convention aligned with fundamental rights must be adhered to, promoting the constitutional guarantees objectives. The actions of the state in granting licenses for military exports to Israel violate India's binding obligations under international law, rendering them arbitrary and unfair, violating Article 14 of the Constitution. Now, the next is food versus cars dilemma. As I said, that we might have heard this debate, food versus fuel dilemma, especially when it comes to producing food grains for making biofuels out of it, leaving less amount of food for consumption. But now has emerged food versus cars dilemma. Cars, basically, this is EVs. Why? Because the main thing is phosphoric acid or phosphorus, which is into picture. For making EVs, we have the phosphorus being used as a raw material or as an important input for the batteries of EVs. Lithium iron phosphate, LFP batteries, these are called as. They are used lithium iron phosphate. This is called as LFP batteries. F, Fe, irons, ferrous. I would say that F comes from there. So LFP batteries, the phosphate is being used for making batteries, and phosphate is also used as an important, input for fertilizers. No, manufacturing of EVs is rapidly going up, which is leaving less phosphate for production of fertilizers, which obviously will be impacting the food productivity. So this is the new issue, food versus cars dilemma. Phosphoric acid is a key ingredient in diammonium phosphate. This is that fertilizer, which is India's second most used fertilizer after urea. This acid is increasingly being used in batteries for electric vehicles. So this is the dilemma. Key issues: role of phosphoric acid. Diammonium phosphate fertilizer contains 46% phosphorus, which is important for early plant growth, especially for roots and shoots. It is made from rock phosphate that is processed with sulfuric acid. LFP batteries, that is lithium iron phosphate batteries. Phosphoric acid serves as the primary source of phosphorus in lithium iron phosphate batteries, which is a key component of cathode material in these batteries. These met over 40% of the global EV capacity demand in 2023, means more than 40% of EVs which were made in 2023 were having this lithium iron phosphate batteries, from just 6% in 2020. So 6% of the batteries were having 6% of the batteries in EVs were made by LFP, but now 40%, and the number of EVs are also rising year by year. These batteries use iron phosphate, which is cheaper than nickel-based batteries that use more expensive material. So there are two types of batteries which can be used. One is lithium iron phosphate batteries. Second is nickel-based or nickel cobalt-based batteries. So just a brief comparison between both these batteries. Although this particular battery, if it is used, that food versus cars debate will vanish, because in this battery nothing of that sort is being used, which is being used over here and in fertilizers as well, that is phosphate. But let's compare both of these batteries, how they are. The pros of lithium iron phosphate batteries: cheaper source and it is cheaply built, doesn't rely on conflicted material. Cobalt is a conflicted material. It is present in areas which are difficult to mine, like Africa and all. So it is like this. More durable to heat and high voltage, this LFP, and it is leading to slower degradation. It degrades slowly, it does not degrade too fast. Cons: lower energy density, means it drains fast, it charges slowly. Shorter range for same size batteries. So the range is shorter. As I said that it drains fast. So an EV will last 200, 220 kilometers, 250 kilometers. Slower charging in the cold. So charging is also slower in the cold. Nickel cobalt based batteries, more energy density they are having, more power and range they are having, can charge faster. These are the pros. Obviously, when these pros are there, the cost will be high, more expensive to build it is. It relies on conflict materials, degrades quickly in heat or high voltage. This is also a con. So this is not suitable for a high temperature country like India. Okay, and because it will degrade quickly, these are more suitable, and that is why this particular, I would say, dilemma or this debate, food versus cars, will be applicable in India, because in India most of the EVs we are using lithium iron phosphate. So India's dependence on imports, talking about the, I would say, fertilizers, India consumes 10.5 to 11 million tons of DAP annually, primarily imported from countries such as China, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, and Russia. Import data of 2022-23, 6.7 million tons of DAP were imported, 2.7 million tons of phosphoric acid, 3.9 million tons of rock phosphate. Total imports exceeded $10 billion. So China, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Russia, Jordan. These are the lines of the countries, or I would say list of the countries from where this diammonium phosphate has been done by India. Very important fertilizer or a very important agricultural input it is, because it helps in the early growth of plants. Second is changes in phosphoric acid use. Phosphoric acid that was once used for fertilizers is now increasingly used in EV batteries after being further purified. This trend is already noticeable in China, where two-thirds of EVs sold in 2023 were using LFP batteries. China shifts its phosphoric acid towards battery production, the supply for fertilizers may drop, and that is what is concerning to India. Raising the food versus cars issue. Global battery market dynamics. LFP batteries are not yet popular in the US and Europe. Probably these countries are those countries where temperatures are not too high and people are having much money with them, so they can go for expensive EVs as well. But in countries like China and India, LFP batteries will be more popular, and LFP batteries will be obviously consuming phosphate, making phosphate less available for fertilizers. Rock phosphate and iron ore are more readily available, suggesting that LFP batteries could become more important due to their lower cost, longer life, and safety, even if they have less energy density. Less energy density means they drain very fast, and thus the range of the EVs which will travel in a single charge will be less. But they will be preferred because of these, I would say, benefits. So, implications for India. What are going to be the implications for India? Impact on DAP availability, which is obviously imported, that will be less. Its cost may go higher. So our imports may become expensive. Imports may become expensive. Fertilizer may become expensive. The government might have to loosen its pockets more, because government cannot pass on the burden of increased price of DAP to the farmers. Government on one hand is looking to increase the incomes of the farmers, and if input costs of the farmers rises, obviously their incomes will be impacted. So this is going to create a fiscal burden on the government. Challenges for farmers. The reduced availability of DAP may be a problem for the upcoming winter spring crop season, especially for crops like mustard, potato, and chickpeas, where DAP is crucial for root growth. DAP sales fell by 20.5% during the monsoon season, pushing farmers to use more complex fertilizers containing less phosphorus. Government pricing and policies. Government has set the price of DAP as 27,000 per ton, just slightly above complex fertilizers, leading to losses for fertilizers companies and a preference for selling complex fertilizers instead of DAP. Cost of imported DAP is around $620 per ton, but with extra costs, the total reaches about 61,000 per ton, and it is being available at 27,000 per ton. So this is the gap, is the subsidy which the government is bearing, and if this cost keeps on increasing, the subsidy burden on the government will also keep on increasing. That is obviously not a good news for the country. So we need to find out some alternate ways. We need to find, or we need to do innovation in this particular scenario. Future directions, adaptation of fertilizer use. With limited phosphate resources, India may need to focus on fertilizers that use nutrients more efficiently, using less nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur. Like we've done that nano urea innovation. We can also go for nano phosphate innovation, where phosphorus demand will reduce and effectivity will increase. A shift towards complex fertilizers may become necessary as recent trends suggests, but complex fertilizers are not so effective like DAP is. Securing raw material supplies. India should secure supplies of raw materials, especially phosphates, through overseas partnerships and agreements. We should diversify our partnerships also. We should diversify our import basket. Indian companies already operate phosphoric acid plants in Senegal, Jordan, Morocco, and Tunisia, but more facilities may be needed for stable supply. So we need to more diversify our supplies. This is what we can do. Now coming on to the MCQs. Which of the following statements are true with respect to Hilsa fish? It is found only in freshwater. Bangladesh produces more than half of the world's Hilsa production. Which of these statements are correct? Second, which of the following is the current conservation status for Hilsa? Endangered, vulnerable, least concerned, critically endangered. Third, according to the petitioners who filed petitions against Indian export of arms to Israel, which of the articles of the Indian Constitution are being violated? Article 21, Article 51B, Article 14. Find the correct combination. Only 1 and 2, only 2 and 3, or only 1 and 3. The fourth question, consider the following statements and mark the correct one. Lithium iron phosphate batteries degrade at a slower rate as compared to nickel cobalt batteries. And LFP batteries can be charged faster than nickel cobalt batteries. Which of these statements are true? Now, the answers to the MCQs of yesterday. Consider the following statements with respect to cervical cancer and mark the correct one. Cervical cancer is prevalent in females only. Yes, it is there in the cervix, lower portion of the cervix. That is very true in females only. Cervical cancer is the third leading cause of cancer deaths among women in the Indo-Pacific region. This statement is also correct, and hence C is going to be the correct answer. That is both 1 and 2. Second, which of the following are India's contributions for tackling cervical cancers? India has developed an AI-based treatment protocol for cervical cancer. No, India has not developed. India is developing. So this is wrong. India has developed a vaccine for cervical cancer and will be supplying it to the Indo-Pacific region. Yes, 40 million doses India will be supplying. This vaccine has been developed. And since this is correct, so obviously this will be wrong. India will contribute a grant of $10 million. No, it is $7.5 million for cancer testing, screening and diagnostics in the region. So this is wrong and this is wrong. B is going to be the correct answer. Consider the following statements with respect to our common agenda report and mark the correct one. This report was released by UN at the end of Summit of the Future. No, it was released by the UN in 2021, and this report became the basis of this Summit of the Future. So this statement is wrong. This report entails innovative approaches to current and future global issues. Yes, this statement is right. So only 2 is going to be the correct answer for this particular question. Fourth, which of these issues were discussed in the summit for the future? Nuclear disarmament, yes. Achieving SDGs, yes. Climate goals, yes. All of the above. D is going to be the correct answer for this. And fifth, consider the following countries and mark which of them share a boundary with Lebanon. Israel, definitely. South of Lebanon is Israel. Jordan, no. Syria, yes, it does. Cyprus is an island, so it does not. Israel and Syria are the correct answer for this, and hence A, well, that is only 1 and 3, is the correct option with respect to this. Now, with this, we've come to an end of today's session. I will be meeting you tomorrow now with more such informative news pieces. Till then, you guys very well know what to do. Namaste. Jai.